These are the most common distractions that we see in the workplace. Number one, psychological distractions. Number two, people distractions, referred to as interruptions. And number three, process distractions. Psychological distractions are those distractions such as we receive some type of bad news, or we live through a traumatic event, self-defeating thinking, destructive limited beliefs. It's weird. It's almost like a movie that's playing in your head, and it's hard for you to get engaged. As one person said, you're there in physical form, but mentally you've checked out. If you know someone that has checked out when you're talking to them, all of us have. You know, I've been in conversation with folks, and you can tell that they're not there. They're distracted. Something is on their mind, and it prevents them from being productive. Well, maybe you're dealing with constant interruptions, people distractions, such as dealing with folks coming into your office, asking for things. Maybe you work from home and the babysitter got sick, or maybe your child is sick, and it's sort of like the kid, instead of, mom working on the keyboard, it's almost like the child wants to turn the keyboard into a piano, and you're distracted because you know that you should be productive, but what do? I have this kid that is probably more engaged with work or as a toy than the parent is. And it happens. And I want to show you some strategies to deal with those interruptions. Or maybe you have an outdated process or an outdated system. 30 years ago, an 8-track was great. But I don't know too many people other than antique dealers that still brag about their 8-track players. When the 8-track sort of was replaced with the cassette player. And now the cassette player has been replaced with the cloud, whatever the cloud is. Very few people actually listen to cassette tapes because of this reason. Just like with the 8-track, the tapes would sometimes get they would unthread themselves, and you would stand there or sit there with a pencil. I remember years ago having this tape, and it got caught, and you would sit there and try to get the kink out, and you couldn't, and eventually you would just give up and throw it away. And so some people, it's the same way with their system, is that the system they had was great for the time, but now that system is outdated. Or maybe your thinking is outdated. Maybe your way of doing things has become outdated. Do me a favor. In the chat box, write what type of distractions are you dealing with? Are you dealing with psychological distraction? In other words, your mind is not in the game. Maybe you're dealing with process. You have an old, outdated way because this is the way we've always done things. Or maybe you're dealing with people interruptions. This is what one of my clients had to say, Karen Perkins. She said, Lyman is the person I needed to help me get focused and get the job done. And she's doing a great job now. Step number 2 is how to virtually eliminate mental distractions. And this is what I want you to do. The first thing you want to do is chart down your common types of distractions. The second thing is to get unplugged from distracting devices and to change what you're listening to. So number 1, okay, I think my battery's made. Number 1, you want to write down the time of the day that you're most distracted. You want to also write down in a journal what type of distractions are you dealing with. Are these psychological distractions? Are they people interruptions? Again, as I mentioned before, is that 35 to 50% productivity can be achieved simply by writing things down. And it's very important that you begin to keep a journal of when you're most distracted. Are you distracted in the morning, afternoon, evening? What's the most common type of distraction? Is it interruptions? What time are these interruptions? And the third part of that is, how are you dealing with those distractions? Now, some distractions are good. It's nice to have if you're working on something and someone just pops in and you get that mental break. That's okay. Sometimes we need those sort of, maybe your spouse or a friend, send you a card or something, and, just to break the monotony of the work. But we're talking about distractions that are unproductive. And so you want to write those down. Another strategy that you can use with dealing with distractions, especially with interruptions, is something as simple as putting a do not disturb sign on the door and letting people know, even on your voice message, I'm working at this time, would love to get back in contact with you, but I'm working on an extremely important project. Make it fun. Make it sound like you're doing some type of government sort of work. People will respect it, but you have to let them know. And also you want to control what you're listening to. Don't listen to negative conversations. Watch the news. The news is the worst thing you can do. And people say, but I need to be informed. Trust me. If something is important, people will let you know. I see so many people change their physical state and their mental state because they spend most of the time reading, watching, and listening to negative information. Research have proven that when we listen to music, for example, and work, the brain is challenged at a new level to maximize your intellectual capacity to create and solve problems. So listening to soft jazz and classical music literally helps you get smarter. Who figured? Just by listening to music, you can get smarter. And studies have shown that time and time again. Step number 3, I want to show you how to eliminate that self-defeating thinking patterns. And all of us have these thoughts that go through our head that we say to ourselves, I'm not any good. Wow, what was I thinking? I must be stupid. That was a dumb mistake. I want to show you how to recognize those self-defeating and limiting thinking patterns. And I also want to give you 2 strategies that you can use today to eliminate that negative self-talk. Instead of standing in the mirror saying, oh, I made a stupid mistake, reverse that and say, it was a challenging day. I don't even say I have a bad day. From now on, you do not have a right to say, I had a bad day. Instead, say, I had a character-building day. You see the difference? Because when we are challenged, when we are facing obstacles, when we are facing challenges and barriers, then guess what? It builds our character. And so instead of saying, oh, I had a horrible day, I had a bad day, say instead, I had a character-enhancing, a character-building day. It's all about what we say and what we believe will literally change our physiology. And if you can change your state, your physiology, it will change your psychology just by literally standing up. And some of you need to breathe. What I want some of you to do right now, literally, just go ahead, put your pencil down, put your ink pen down, and just for a moment, just repeat after me. I am special. Go ahead. I want to hear you. I can see you. Just say to yourself, I am special. I am creative. I am powerful. And then when you say powerful, what you do is sort of like the Superman stand. That stand that Janet was doing, it's amazing. Just by standing there with your feet shoulder length apart and put your hands on your hips and say it. I am powerful. Man, do you feel the energy? I do that every day, and man, it does something. It gets the blood flowing. It gets the endorphins going. Talk about a real high. Man, just say that several times a day, and I guarantee you it will begin to change the way you feel about yourself. You know, the other thing is you have to be careful what you listen to. Don't allow people to say negative things to you. You know, the people that run around and say, oh, did you hear about this? Oh, did you, can you believe this happened? Stay away from those folks. Because when you listen to negative messages, listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. Listen to this. Do you realize for every one negative comment, it takes 5 to 7 positive comments to eliminate the one negative? So you have a 5-to-1 ratio. For every one negative, it's going to take 5 to 7 positive. So wouldn't it make sense just to limit your conversation to those that are positive? Now, I know some of you are saying, well, wait a minute, Lyman, that sounds great, but we live in a real world. Now, I'm not saying not to be constructive, because, yeah, we need to know if something's not right. We need to be challenged, but it's how you say it, okay? It's not always about doom and gloom and gossip. One person said, instead of shedding gospel, shed the good news or the gospel, which the gospel simply means good news. Tell people some good news for a change. When the last time you heard some really good news? Here's a strategy. Kick the butt out of your mouth. What? That doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. Literally, kick the butt out of your mouth. What do I mean by that? How many of you have heard the statement, do I look fat in these jeans? Honey, you look wonderful, but what do you think the last thing she heard? But. Whenever you use the conjunction but, it literally erased everything you said prior to that. So what do I want you to do? Instead of saying but, because when we say but, it's almost like this picture here where the person says, speak to the hand, because I'm not listening to you. So this is what you do. Instead of saying but, try this strategy. Insert the word and, A-N-D. For example, I love the brochure, but I have a few changes I want to make. What the person hears is, I hate the brochure. Now, if you substitute the word but for and, it would read like this. I love the brochure, and I have a few suggestions to make. You see the difference? It does not allow the person to get on the defensive, because rather than putting up a defense, you actually allow that person to relax, to breathe, and to embrace the criticism. So whenever you want to criticize something, don't use but simply use and. If you like that strategy, go ahead and let me know if that's a good strategy for you. So, just to recap, we talked a little bit about psychological distractions. We talked about process distractions. We also talked about people interruptions. And if you recall, the strategies to deal with those, we said it might be as simple as putting a do not disturb sign on the door. It might put in a notification on your phone that you're busy doing some top secret, have fun. We talked about when you're working to play some soft music like jazz or classical music, because studies have shown that literally by playing that soft music in the background, it causes the brain to pay more attention and to allow you to focus in more on what you're doing. We also talked about kicking the butt out of your mouth and replacing it with and. Here's another strategy that I want to share with you. And it's called Play I Caught You Game. What? Play the I Caught You game? What is that? No, it doesn't mean you run around with a camera saying, I caught you. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean when I say I caught you game is every time you say something that is negative or something that is critical about yourself, I want you to either partner with someone or put $5 in a kitty. And this is how you play the game. So I would call up my friend Janet. I say, Janet, I'm trying to be more positive, and I need your help. So every time you hear me say something negative about myself or be overly critical, not constructive, but overly critical about myself, I'm going to pay you $5. And Janet is going to say, that is great. And so she's going to the end of the week. I'm going to go to Janet and say, Janet, how did I do? And Janet, being a good friend of mine, she's going to say, I think you need to take out a loan to take me to dinner. I hope not. So I hope she says, well, you only owe me a cup of coffee because you was only negative once during the whole week. And just have fun with it. And you'll find out someone who keeps you and holds you accountable for what we say and for what we do, your chances of being successful increases by 50%. And studies have shown this. It's sort of like those who go to the gym and work out alone versus those who work out with a partner. Studies have shown time and time again by working out with someone increases your chance of reaching your goal by 50 to 60%. The same with weight loss. And another strategy, and this is one that I strongly recommend, is that you join a mastermind or an accountability group. And what's the purpose of a mastermind? The purpose of a mastermind or accountability group is to not just hold you accountable, but also to share ideas, new strategies, new ways of thinking, so that you don't get anchored to just one way of doing things. And there is power in being with like-minded people that share a common goal and heading somewhere. You know, one of my students, I also work with a lot of graduate students, and one of my students, she said, my productivity increased by 70% using Lyman's system. Since Lyman has been my focus coach, and I have been using his Get Focused Today system, my work productivity has gone up over 70%, and my reading productivity went up 50% in just 1 week.